All right, so this is one of those videos where I've been pacing, trying to get my thoughts in order for this one, and I feel like I'm gonna pace for 3 more hours and still not have my thoughts ready to do this video. Lord of the Flies is one of those stories that shines a spotlight on human nature, so I'm here talking about what I see and what it means to me, and I just want to get it right. So I feel like I'm going to be at best for the most part right, so hopefully that's enough. Anyhow, I want to talk about Lord of the Flies. No idea why I call it inspiration. Lord of the Flies. So Lord of the Flies is actually two films. It was a book written by William Golding, and then it was adapted into a film in 1963, and then a film again in 1990. And at this point, I don't even know what this video is going to really be like. It's not a review of the book. Is it a review of both movies? Possibly. I'm probably going to compare both the movies and talk about how they did things similar or different to the book. And in any case, I just want to talk about Lord of the Flies. One of these movies is superior to the other, and so we'll just talk about it. So Lord of the Flies is a story that you might have heard mentioned as of late. It is about a group of schoolboys, and they're all marooned on this island, no adults around, which, hey, great, they're having fun. And in all versions, they all find this conch. In the book and the two films, the conch. The conch is law. It's a seashell that you essentially can blow into it, and it sounds like a horn. And they're like, okay, the law is, if you're holding the conch, you can talk. You have the floor, so to speak, but you can't talk without the conch. So that's really the first law that they come up with in order to have some form of civility. And as time goes on, things start to fall apart, and now you have the Lord of the Flies references you have heard. And I've always enjoyed the story of Lord of the Flies ever since at the latest high school. But I think it's because it's the earliest and most concise story that makes the point, just a very focused way. It shines a spotlight on human nature, it points right to it in about 300 pages. And it's all about that. And I love Golding's response, the author of the book. I love his response when he talks about there have been a lot of interpretations of Lord of the Flies, but what he intended to put into it is not as important as what readers got out of it. And so he never really tries to explain the nuance of what was being said in certain scenes. It's like, if you got that out of it, that's what you got out of it, and that's the important thing. I always like that. The 1963 Lord of the Flies, it's lower budget, absolutely, and that's like kind of a burn people have with it. They're like, oh, it's super low budget, it looks cheap. I don't know, I kind of came up in a time where if you could make a low budget, cheap ass movie, that was kind of cool. Like, look at Clerks, it's just like, it's Clerks, but Lord of the Flies. Not really. Actually, I think Clerks was cheaper. In both the 1963 version and the 1990 version, the acting isn't, it's not top notch. In both cases, you're dealing with really young children who, it's not like they have a lot of acting experience. But the weaker of the two films, I'll start with the weakest one, I guess, is the 1990 version. The 1990 version is a textbook case of, for the most part, having the point there, and still not making the audience feel it. Like, with Lord of the Flies, you have to feel it. You have to feel that these kids are becoming ravenous and animalistic. You have to feel the decline of society. Also, they change things in a weird way, and I don't know why. I'm just scratching my head the entire time. Like, you just burned up screen time concentrating on this captain who's still alive on the island, which I think was a huge mistake, because in the 1963 film version and the book, in both cases, the kids just arrive on this island with no adults. That is a throw them out of the nest and see how they fly kind of scenario. There's no real hope that an adult is just going to spring up and be like, all right, kids, I got your back. I'll lead you. But in the 1990 film version, the captain is still alive, though he's kind of in a coma, but still, the fact that he is not dead gives them that hope. You can make the argument that having the captain alive on the island, but in this comatose state, is essentially something to give the kids something to latch onto of the old world. But really, that's what the act of lighting the signal fire to get rescued is, so it just kind of seemed redundant. But like, the captain was a massive waste of time. Yeah, later on, they believe there's a monster on the island, this monster. And so one of the kids runs across the captain, who's kind of like in this fevered haze, and he thinks he's the monster. I guess I just relate to the parachute in the book and the 1963 version, because when we're talking pre-kindergarten, I was at this babysitter's house, and there was this parachute in the trees, and it was ripped in a way. Probably wasn't ripped like this, to be honest with you, but this is how I remember my kid brain processing it, was ripped in a way that it looked like it had two eyes and a mouth. It looked like a big ghost in the tree, and it scared the fucking shit out of me. So in the story of the book in the 1963, it's like, oh, we saw a parachute. I'm like, I totally understand. But from a filmmaking aspect, some of the acting aside, I'll say the 1963 version is the superior version. Simply because you start to see the kids deteriorate and acting out, lashing out. There's scenes where they're just like screaming at nothing. And that scene where they're all dancing around the campfire, that shit was intense, I'm not gonna lie. And that's what I mean when I say with Lord of the Flies, you have to feel it. The 1963 version made me feel it more. And the fact that Lord of the Flies tells the story of human nature from children, I think that's brilliant, to be honest with you. I always have. As I've aged, my perspective as to why is kind of changed, or at least evolved. Like when I was younger, I kind of saw it as brilliant because, well, they're innocent, and even kids are not above human nature. But as I've aged and gotten older, I've realized that kids are less apt at using masks to navigate social situations. Adults have learned to do that. You look at kids are very, well, emotionally, I want to do this. Adults can put on masks and navigate different social situations. You see that with cafeterias. Younger school kids in cafeterias, you're like, those are the nerds, those are the jocks, those are the goths. These are 90s cliques I'm talking about, because that's when I was in school. But in the workplace, you kind of see social structure, but different people can navigate into different tables in a workplace cafeteria. In that, with kids not really being refined in using social masks as adults do, you take kids in a situation like this, and they are human nature incarnate, you know? They're the control experiment. They're human nature without any of the social bullshit. They're not old enough to have the experience to have learned it. That's the reason I now see how using kids in Lord of the Flies, it's actually a brilliant call. But you know, a thing I noticed in this reading of the book, it was like, in 3 days, I read the book, I watched one of the movies, then I watched the other movie. Is that it's not just the absence of civilization. It's not just the lawlessness. It was the great unifier of fear. The fear of this monster, the fear of this thing that was in the woods. And so all the hunters were like, well, we will protect you. And at that point, they're like, well, if we're doing the work, why aren't we running shit? So it's not just the absence of law and civilization. It's the absence of law and civilization mixed with fear. And you take those components and mix them together. It's like the bomb in Die Hard with a Vengeance, you know? You mix them, boom. And that is a very important and timeless lesson. I suppose Lord of the Flies, like, if you watch it for the first time right now, you're going to be like, well, I've seen these stories before. But again, for me, it was the earliest and most concise telling of this lesson. But yeah, we've totally seen this lesson a lot now, you know, movies, TV, video games, it's been in everything. It's kind of the basis of The Walking Dead, you know, oh, no civilization. So now people just kind of act how they act. So you have Negan. The story of Negan is like, they're like, well, Lord of the Flies, but adults. Even with The Abyss, though Coffee had, you know, he was kind of deranged because he was down there for that long and he had that sickness that they talked about that I can't think of the name of, but The Abyss is straight up, like I've said before, low-key, one of Cameron's best movies. But still, it's that isolationist feeling of no law, also paranoia equals bad things. I feel like it all kind of stems from Lord of the Flies. But the lessons of Lord of the Flies are not to be forgotten. In the end, it's the Joker's entire philosophy in The Dark Knight. In The Dark Knight, when the Joker's talking to Batman about human beings, and he's like, their morals, their code, it's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble. I'll show you when the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. Struggling with whether or not that is accurate is not struggling with whether or not a mass murdering clown is right about people. It's not even struggling with whether or not Christopher Nolan is right about people. It's really struggling with whether or not Lord of the Flies is accurate. It's all Lord of the Flies philosophy. So in the end, I dig Lord of the Flies. I do feel like it's a story that lends itself best to being a book. They could probably do the best job making it a miniseries, but the 1963 version is actually remarkably accurate to the book, and it does drag a bit in the first half of it because this is kind of what Lord of the Flies is. It's a slow burn like that. But I've always enjoyed what Lord of the Flies has to say about human nature, tribalism, fear, reacting out of fear, and how in us it is to go along with the side that looks like, well, that's the side of survival. I'm trying to be vague. I don't want to have any spoilers for the movie from 1963 based off the book written a decade prior. And it's just a lesson that was relevant then, it was relevant before it was written, is relevant now, will be relevant for centuries to come if we make it that long. All right, so Lord of the Flies, have you read the book? Have you seen the movies? Have you seen a movie? Which one have you seen and which one did you like or not like? Hope I covered it all there. I think I did. And what does Lord of the Flies say to you? How do you process the information given to you? That's important. That's very much a part of all of it. So whatever you think, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.